Well, welcome to another podcast from Odelle Technology. And today we're fortunate enough to be joined by the team from Eightfold Governance. And we're joined by young Lyndon Johnson and Ryan Palmer. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm not sure I'm that young anymore, Stephen, but very kind of you to say so.
Nice to see you. And Ryan, nice to see you as well.
Yeah, likewise. No, well, thank you.
And you both, I know you recently attended the trade show in Amsterdam. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Health Europe event, really great event. Unlike any traditional healthcare focused trade show, I would say. Um, Good range of speakers, different topics covered, and it's more of an international gathering more than anything. I think for the community, which is nice. We don't do that enough, and it's nice to see that the UK has the same problems as Germany, France, the US when it comes to digital health adoption. But yeah, it's a really good event.
All right. Well, I might get you to introduce yourselves to the audience. Lyndon, would you mind starting?
Of course, I'm Lyndon Johnson. I'm the co-owner and co-founder of Eightfold Governance, and recently stepped back from the CEO role to be a non-exec director with my business partner. My background is a little unusual. I had a successful career in sales in London and Johannesburg until the age of 25. When I took a rather unusual turn for a salesman and retrained as a nurse at the age of 25. And then, yeah, a fairly long career in mainly critical care. So running A&E departments, working in intensive care, working on air ambulances, expedition medicine. Lots of fun, really enjoyed it. And the end of my NHS career was in senior management in the NHS. I then crossed the Rubicon to work for Mohammed at Patients Know Best after they came to pitch to me because they had a very good idea about democratizing data for patients. Um, and then when I think I joined that business as perhaps the fifth or sixth employee. And as soon as businesses get to a certain size, I seem to want to, I like the early shiny ones, Stephen. So started my own business about 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, fabulous. All right. Ryan, could you tell us something about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ryan Palmer. I'm the commercial director at Eightfold Governance. Slightly different background to Lyndon. I joined the industry having just completed a history and war studies degree. So quite a shift in terms of industry focus. I actually joined Patients Know Best as a graduate, which is where I first met Lyndon and we worked together for a first few years of my career. And then following that, I've worked for a few well-known entities within the digital health sector in the UK. So Lantern, who do workforce scheduling and locum GP appointments, and also Orca as well. So I've been in the system for a number of years and spent a lot of time working at that sort of SME startup stage, helping businesses build new verticals in the NHS, and bringing new products to the market.
Excellent. Okay. Well, can you tell us, this is an open question to both of you. Can you tell me or tell the audience, please, how Eightfold Governance was founded and what unmet need in the UK healthcare system you set out to address?
Yeah. So if I take a start on that, so I came across my business partner Adam. He was a DPO for an integrated care system in the NHS, and I'd executed a couple of deals with him. While I was on the supplier side, and he was on the NHS side. We shared an interest in digital health technology products that were really capable of kind of transforming people's care. So we cared very much about, things that worked and worked well. The indicator for us to start the company was I was executing a deal for a company. I won't mention their name, but they had some online forums that patients could access. Wonderful solution that enabled patients to ask each other questions in a peer-reviewed setting rather than go to their healthcare practitioner. And in the course of executing this deal, I was working as a consultant for the company involved, and it transpired that the company did not have the right governance and compliance documentation in place, which I had asked about. And it was, and unfortunately, the deal didn't get done, and it led Adam and I to have a long discussion about some of these wonderful, at the time, early stage companies that could offer so much to the healthcare system and so much to society, that were stumbling on the, often quite complex ground of governance and compliance. And yeah, I didn't know Adam that well at the time, but I said, I think there is a need here. I think there is a niche here. And we set about starting a company that was very focused on quality, on adding value to our clients, on being valuable to society and valuable to patients. And it's gone very well. So that was kind of 6 years ago, and we're now, I always forget, right? I think we're maybe 18 employees, maybe 19, something like that.
We will be 18 full-time equivalents shortly.
Okay.
I'm always accused, Stephen, of slightly over-egging the figures, which
That's all right. That's understandable. So now, for those less familiar with what exactly does data governance mean in the NHS and health research world, and why it is such a pain point for innovators, can you explain it to people, please?
Would you like to take that one, Ryan?
Yeah, sure. So it's one of the first hurdles that a lot of companies face when they're working with the healthcare system. Because the first question is, what's going to happen with all this data that we're going to give to you effectively in your platform? And in my experience in the NHS, what the NHS are really looking for is assurance that you as the supplier are going to manage that data in accordance with the law. So we have the UK GDPR over here. And I know we have different other standards such as HIPAA in the US, and we obviously have the EU flavour of GDPR as well, and certain sub certifications as well, like C5 in Germany. But it's really important that the companies understand that that's the first barrier to entry. Companies need to address that requirement to basically build trust and build confidence in what work they want to do with the healthcare system.
Okay, so could you walk me through a typical timeline for a digital health company trying to access or cross over the barriers you've just discussed, and what are the big blockers for people?
I think it varies depending on what type of technology you're deploying. There's been some recent guidance published by NHS England about ambient voice technologies. So these are scribe technologies that are doing more than just digital dictation. They're providing summarization and other functionality, which classes them as a medical device. What we're seeing at Eightfold is more and more products that are doing that type of technology, but are also doing functionality that means that they find themselves in that medical device category. So they become a regulated product. It's no secret that being a regulated product takes a little bit more time when it comes to going to market. But if you're providing a digital health tool, there are numerous steps that you need to take. And the first one really is understanding, are you a regulated product? Because if you are a regulated product, your time to market is probably going to be a little bit longer because of all of the quality assurance, the registration of the device that you will need to do. Here in the UK, we have something else that all suppliers need to comply with, which is called the NHS Digital Technology Assessment Criteria, more commonly referred to as the DTAC. And that's made up of 5 key areas: clinical safety, data protection, technical security, interoperability, and usability and accessibility. And within each of those sections of the DTAC are legislative requirements, so statutory requirements for you to comply with. If you're a medical device, do you have your declaration of conformity, for example? If you're providing services, are you registered with the CQC? And suppliers need to, first of all, get an awareness of what pathway are they taking when it comes to compliance to actually enter the NHS. Because if they don't get that right, quite often what they can find themselves in the position of is they find very enthusiastic clinicians, a very small pot of money to run a small pilot, and then the governance team comes in and says, where's your DPIA? Where's your clinical safety case report? Where's your regulatory documentation? And as Lyndon has experienced, and I've experienced, there is nothing more deflating than that for companies when they get to that point. So it's really about understanding what type of product you are, what journey you need to go on, and getting that compliance documentation in order from the outset.
Okay, that's perfect. So without naming names, unless you're able to, of course, could you share an example where Eightfold has helped a digital health or an AI company accelerate NHS adoption?
And just before we go there, Stephen, I just wanted to just to make something clear. So we started off in data governance, but what we've taken quite a lot of time to do is to make sure that we have a full service offering effectively across most of the domains that any kind of digital health medical device or health technology company might need. So we have a fully employed team that can look after the information governance and the data governance, but also the medical device certification, the international standards, the cybersecurity, the penetration testing, the clinical safety case, issues with CQC, and not just in the UK, but internationally. And I just wanted to kind of make that point, and I'm sorry to jump in, Ryan, before, but I don't know if you can offer an example, Ryan, is that possible?
I can share one example of an AI technology that has done very well without naming names. So they're an ambient scribe product. They've recently just completed the biggest test of ambient AI in the NHS and are about to publish a paper in Nature about the work that they've done and the outcomes that they've seen from frontline clinical staff using ambient technology. And we work with them from the very early days, even pre-seed fundraising. So we actually help them to build out their documentation to meet all of these requirements with the NHS. And I know their CEO is very proud of the fact that they took compliance seriously from day one. And increasingly, we see founders who perhaps aren't taking it as seriously as they need to, and very quickly have to understand that actually compliance is a fundamental aspect of their organization. But we work with a lot of startups and SMEs, particularly international companies. One of our clients that I know will be comfortable for me to name drop is Corti AI, who are doing lots of exciting things with ambient AI and building APIs for third parties to use their proprietary solution, which is really exciting and quite a novel approach. And we also work with some large multinational enterprises as well, because believe it or not, Stephen, the small companies have exactly the same problem as the large companies. Navigating some of the challenges of adoption are the same, whether you're a 100 million revenue company or a £100,000 company.
Okay. Does the company work directly with NHS trusts or hospitals, or indirectly?
They work directly. So they work at an ICB, GP level. They work across the system.
Okay.
And healthcare systems internationally as well, I would say.
Okay. So are there models where you've embedded perhaps an innovation or yourselves inside an organization?
I mean, sometimes, so our team, I think, to our clients feel very much part of their team. And so I think our clients very much feel like we're with them every step of the way. And the approach we take in terms of, because you were asking about a timeline, this sort of governance and the sort of ways that we work with a company, we hardly ever just do kind of blobs of consultancy. We offer them a service where we kind of walk along the road with them effectively. And what that means quite often is that when we first get involved, we'll sit down with the teams and help them with a governance roadmap. So not just what they need to get their next project or piece of work completed, but also what it might look like in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time. And one of the things that enables us to do is to ensure that the company doesn't create kind of compliance silos for themselves within the market. So we very much encourage the companies to think about a kind of harmonizing approach, and we make sure that everything that we do for these companies can be reused, if you like. So a good example of that might be a company might need ISO 27001 to bid for a tender in, let's say, France, but because we've sat down and written a governance roadmap with them, we know that in a year or two's time, once they've conquered the French market or the UK market or the Dutch market, wherever it may be, they then want to start looking at the US market. Now, if we've done that piece of work for them for ISO 27001 and we know they're heading toward HIPAA in a particular timeline, we can make sure that we structure that documentation within their systems so it can be reused, because actually a lot of these ISO standards can be reused in different ways if it's thought about and dealt with in an integrated fashion up front. So it's less with, I would say, we're less project based and more, we'll walk down a road with a client over a period of time and really kind of be a bit of a navigator for them. I think that's a fair term, isn't it? Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about the comment that Lyndon just made about siloing information and siloing data and creating more a service is something that you're doing right now. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So one thing we discovered through a lot of the work that we've done with clients, particularly international clients, is that there is a very strong interlock between different standards like ISO 27001, HIPAA, the Data Security Protection Toolkit in the UK. And I think the best analogy that we've come across came from Adam, Lyndon's co-founder, which was that all of these different standards, they're global recipes with local variations. So businesses that do very well at adopting standards are the ones that can look at it from a holistic perspective and say that, okay, my breach policy for ISO 27001 is very similar to what I need to do to comply with HIPAA. So rather than reinventing the wheel here and creating a silo of documentation just for HIPAA, how can I integrate it? And the reason this became very compelling to us and is something that we really try and encourage our customers to embrace is because there's a lot of duplication already, and companies get themselves really tied up in compliance documentation. So if you can harmonize it, it means that you can actually accelerate adoption, but also follow what you've got written down in your policies and procedures. And you wouldn't believe how difficult it is sometimes. And I'm guilty of this as well. How hard it is sometimes to actually follow what you've written down. And that in itself is just really what we're passionate about. We're passionate about actually making compliance work for the organization. We don't just want to do kind of force-fed, this is how you should do things. We want to make it work for a business that has global aspirations and understands that actually there are multiple things they're going to have to comply with as they grow.
So what sort of things are blocking harmonization today?
I think it's mainly a lack of knowledge, if I'm honest. Typically, early stage companies, they have a decision to make around hiring, particularly their first compliance person or their first regulatory person. And those individuals usually come with one area of expertise that they have an immense amount of experience in, whether it's data protection, medical device regulations, CQC, but they can't really see the wood for the trees because they have to think about their area of specialization, but then lots of other areas as well. So they often don't have time to see that cross correlation. Harmonization is more common in the medical device world because medical device manufacturers want that harmonization. They want it to be easy for them to register in one country and then go to another and not have to duplicate the work they've already done. But for things like data protection, information governance, clinical safety, that country variation does make it very hard to sit down and go line by line, comparison by comparison. I need this for the UK, but I also need this for the US.
So Eightfold could help establish reusable, pre-approved documentation libraries for digital health innovators, sort of a shared governance toolkit. That's what you're talking about, is it?
So we already deploy that with some organizations. So we've worked with an organization called Brain Plus.
Yes.
They deploy cognitive stimulation therapy with a digital companion. If you've not come across cognitive stimulation therapy, it's a NICE approved therapy for dementia patients. Really exceptional literature around it, but nobody deploys it. It's a shame, really. I've had several members of my family that have had dementia, and I've seen the impact that it can have on families. And CST actually opens the door to memories and things that you otherwise wouldn't get unlocked with traditional methods. But working with Brain Plus, what we were able to do was look at their compliance portfolio, and they're a medical device. So they had a lot of different standards that they need to comply with, but then also all of the UK specific regulations as well. And we were able to harmonize them, build them a integrated management system that meant that there was no duplication. And they've actually recently fed back to us, and we'll be publishing a case study fairly soon, that in terms of the approach that we've taken, it's helped them build a better operational culture in the business. And it's a culture of not duplicating work, following what's written down, and actually just having robust processes that work for them, not for anybody else.
I'm just going to say, I thought what Ryan gave there was a lovely example of the culture within our business, because really what's driving us is this kind of fundamental belief that everybody can win here. We do a very good job for our clients. They are able to provide their services back to patients and health systems more effectively. But at the very highest level, we're serving patients and society. And there really is that culture within the business. So we get excited when we can see one of our clients being able to go to market quicker and have an impact with patients. That really matters to us. I'd like to think we end up attracting those sorts of clients as a result, because we have that underlying ethos. And I think people can really tell, there's a lots of ex-healthcare professionals and people with law degrees and medical device certifications who come from a place of just wanting to make the best things happen, and that's what we're all about.
So what are your views on secondary use of data, particularly for AI training or predictive modeling? Are there frameworks, are the frameworks keeping up with that?
So I'd have to ask one of the information governance professionals, but my underlying philosophy. So I spent a lot of time, and both Ryan and I did actually, with Patients Know Best, to get a deal done and to get a system deployed into a healthcare system where effectively patients are sending a copy of their data to an encrypted cloud to then that's effectively democratizing it because the patient is then in control. But I believe that my fundamental belief is all of that data should be available to be used. And the reason we have things like GDPR is you just need to ask the patient. Where kind of national systems make a real hash of it is they try and we're going to quietly hive off this data and then reuse it. But in my experience, both as a nurse and a professional working in this business, if you articulate to somebody the data that we have on you, whether it be your DNA or the treatment that we gave or whatever it may be, could be used to save other people's lives, could be used to improve treatment. And here are the safeguards and the guardrails around us not doing something grim with that data. Most people will just say yes. The way that needs to happen is that patients need an effective way, like we have on our applications on our computers and smartphones, to be able to switch on and off those permissions based on the behavior of the companies that are trying to use the data. That's what I think. But that's my personal opinion. Yeah. Right, Ryan, do you feel differently about that?
No, I agree. I think the key word you mentioned there, Lyndon, was consent.
Yeah.
And what a lot of organisations have done, and we've seen it in the NHS, is they hide behind this idea of consent. And really, it just needs to be transparent. There's a lot of confusion, I think, just in the general public about what the government or what the NHS do with their data. And I mean, I speak to my friends who have no experience in the healthcare industry, and they're like, "What, you mean I can't get my data in Leeds and I live in Shropshire?" That blows their mind, because there's this marketing visage of one NHS. And I think all of us who've been in the system long enough know that the NHS is only unified in branding. That's about it. Everything else is very different on a regional level. But yeah, I think, like you said, Lyndon, I think if people are told the value of what their data could do for others, I generally think people will be quite welcoming of the idea of training AI.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you had one message or two messages for digital health founders trying to work with the NHS data, what would the messages be? It's an open question.
I think for me, and not just the NHS, any international healthcare system, just with your wonderful idea and your wonderful technology, whether it be a medical device or digital health technology, or a service even, just bite the bullet and think about what the long-term roadmap looks like for your compliance. Because the company that you start with, by the time you're an SME and by the time you're in the kind of growth and a scaling phase, they're all going to be different. And planning that out in the beginning in a realistic way. I mean, I have less direct contact with clients, but the amount of times I'm sat on a call and a founder saying, "Yeah, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go for Class 2A medical device status, and and that's just going to take this amount of time." And I'm like, just be honest with yourself about how long it's going to take, how much resource is going to be required, when do you need it, and that's where I think where we're kind of super helpful, is that we can realistically help our clients prioritize what they should be doing in which order, and also being honest with them about, this is going to take not 3 months, it might take this many months, and it's going to take this sort of resource. So really what I'm saying in the round, Stephen, is be honest with yourself and plan properly. Don't stick your head in the sand and just like, I'm going to deal with that later because I'm moving fast and breaking stuff. It doesn't work in this industry.
Right.
I agree with everything Lyndon said. And just going back to my earlier point as well, writing a policy is one thing. If you don't follow it, it's almost not worth even writing the policy.
Yeah.
So again, focus on the implementation. Make sure that what you're writing in your policies for data protection, medical device regulatory, and your SOPs, whatever it may be, make sure it works for your organization. And if you ever find yourself reading a policy and thinking, well, we don't do that, and I don't really want to do it that way, can we find a better way to do it? Spend the time making it better, because it will just help you in the long run.
Okay, so what's next for Eightfold? Are there plans to expand across the European Union, across the states, collaborate with more academic researchers, or help shape national policy? What's in the future?
So I think, so we certainly set ourselves up for a scaling future. I would say that we already work across the US, the EU, the UK, in a variety of different guises. What we spend time doing is listening to what our clients need, and so we feel already we have a full service offering, so the client doesn't have to go to lots of different consultants. They can get all these things from under one roof. And we've written a solid 3-year strategy that we obviously will adapt as we go, but making sure that we're in the right rooms and providing advice to the right people. But I think, for me, ensuring that we add value to our clients and making sure these technologies get to market, that's our #1 priority. Right, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in terms of how we're set up, there's lots of opportunities for us to explore new markets now. I'm spending a lot of time in Copenhagen, Amsterdam, in Europe, just working with the local ecosystem there, because the local ecosystem is really where you find out what are people struggling with. And we're a company that I feel has been built on the premise of we fix problems, and we do a very good job of it. And the way that we innovate and the way that we think about the future is really entrenched in that belief that we want to solve problems for people. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also plenty of things that are already in flight that we can't share too much about, as well, which people will find out more about in the future.
Absolutely. I wanted to thank both of you very much for your time today. That brings us to the end. A huge thank you to you both for not only demystifying the complex world of NHS data and access to NHS data and research approval, but for showing us what real-world support looks like for a digital health innovator. I suppose whether it's harmonising documentation across trusts or navigating the maze of DPIAs and ethics boards that you people do, all of your clients speak very, very highly of you. And that was one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the podcast. So thank you very, very much for your time today.
Yeah.
It's always a pleasure to speak to you, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Stephen.